was it like copyright free? There's plenty of music that you can grab out there if you wanted to. There's websites and stuff where people put up music and it's copyright free, and you can just put it behind your videos and that kind of thing, or you pay that website and that gives you the license to use it. Yeah, you could do that. I was thinking of trying to make a little intro piece, just a little bit that I could play at the start of each show, so that people start to hear that and associate that with the show. But
make it yourself.
Yeah, possibly, because then it's free. I don't have to pay for it. You know.
Yeah. So you've got the music skills.
I just reckon with watching YouTube and using GarageBand, I can hack something up that's only got to play quietly for like 15 seconds and probably be enough to go, oh, didn't sound too bad.
Yeah, I've always sort of dreamed of doing the whole messing around on a studio, grabbing, one of those. What was the program? The one that was made in bloody New Lynn. There's a
I don't know.
There's a program for what would you call it? Like stripping out various tracks out of a music recording, and then so you split all those out, and then you can mess with the individual parts. It's a bit like the Prodigy. You know how the Prodigy made their music?
No.
If you look at the or listen to their tracks, you'll hear a bunch of
like sampled
all sampled from here and there,
yeah,
and it's quite hard to pick. There was a girl, Kirsten Zemke, used to do a breakdown on BFM, and used to, I think it was her. She broke it all down to the individual components, and it was quite a cool sort of trip that sort of takes you down the road of. This came from this came from this, and they jiggled with this much, they either changed the speed or the tempo or the tone, and then
what they did to produce this track to get it to sound the way it sounds.
Yeah, then they put their own vocal over the top.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's quite the journey, and I'd love to do that with some old Sabbath or whatever,
Do you listen to SoundCloud? Do you ever use SoundCloud?
Only for just whenever we're having a party or whatever, just background music, so just grab a playlist, someone's set that they put up, and
yeah. The thing I found about SoundCloud that I really liked was I would type in the name of a track that I know, like, I don't know, a Bon Jovi track or a Bruce Springsteen track or something from when I was a kid, and then you just go, wow, there are so many remixes of it in so many genres. That's the fun thing. Like, sometimes I'm doing work, I'll pick a song and let it go and just let it play through all the remixes, and you get these like dubstep remixes of Bon Jovi, and then there'll be some hardcore remix will come in. That's cool, just to see what's happening.
So all under the one band?
No, all about like just from anyone, like anyone across SoundCloud.
You make your selection, and then what does it throw up for you?
Oh yeah, like for example, if I put in there, like a Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer. Type in Living on a Prayer remix into SoundCloud, then you'll just get a wall of tracks. Different individuals who've taken that original song and then remixed it, sampled bits of it, broken it up, done other stuff with it. Some of it's rubbish. Some of it's really good.
It sounds like a bit of a nightmare. The idea that you're going to listen to Living on a Prayer over and over. I mean, I heard it a lot in 1980, whatever that was, but didn't want to... sort of done with it, but I mean, like Pantera doing Planet Caravan or something. It's and a lot of various metal bands do Black Sabbath covers because they're so pivotal.
If you chose a Sabbath song, if you went to SoundCloud and chose a Sabbath song and put the word remix at the end of it, you would get all sorts of stuff coming through. Definitely. It just suggested to me the other day. A new Megadeth song, The World's on Fire, Planet's on Fire or something. It's great. The solo, like the outro solo for the last minute and a half is just so good. I've been pestering everyone in the house with it for about a week. Just listen to this. And they're like, oh, you old metaler.
Isn't it's one of the old tracks?
No, it's a new Megadeth. It's a new Megadeth track. Yeah.
And it's worth a listen.
Oh, I think it is. It's kind of classic metal solo, but yeah, it's good. World's on Fire, Earth's on Fire, something like that. It's off a new album. Yeah.
And it's Mustaine. Is it
Yeah,
still
it's
Ellefson? And
I did Google a little bit about who the lineup is, but I think it's Mustaine still on vocals and
on
guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's another dude on lead guitar though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Did Mustaine play bass at some stage? Can't remember.
He's the only one that's been with them the whole way through.
Well, he is.
Yeah.
Megadeth, yeah.
He's still there. I think most of the other ones are sort of swapped in and out at some stage, but they've been going for what, 30 years?
Yeah, more.
Yeah.
Yeah. They started in the early 80s, same time as Metallica, because Mustaine was with Metallica.
Yeah.
In the early days.
Crazy as how some people just get associated with big bands. Like,
yeah, I think it's those big towns, like the rock stars hang out,
Yeah.
It's like Skid Row and Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
The Snake Zabo and Rachel Bolan, they were at I think it was that same school with John Bon Jovi.
Oh, well.
And they sort of like made a pact and said, well, you get famous first, we'll help you out, and vice versa. Because they were all into the music, and then once they cracked it, I think it was Skid Row that cracked it first, and so they pushed
All right. Yeah.
Bon Jovi's barrow for them.
And then you got 10 years later, this whole Seattle thing, all those bands coming out of Seattle and the whole grunge sound. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I suppose different areas. If you've got a collection of musicians there, in the States, you've got a big enough audience that you can survive by playing your hometown. You could probably just play enough gigs in Seattle through a course of a week to make enough money when you're that young to survive.
Yeah. And it was something that Kirsten Zemke explored a lot, was geographic influence on music, because you could say, well, Dunedin's got its sound.
Oh, yeah, true.
I don't know if you...
I don't know it well, but definitely. Renee grew up through all of that. And,
yeah. And, so even in the States, like from Seattle, it sort of went to Portland. Well, a bit of a hiatus in between, but, so the whole Jack White, what's it called? The White Stripes.
White Stripes, yeah.
And, then a whole lot of other artists really grew up out of there. And like sort of the glam metal was sort of based around, a lot of it was based around Whiskey A Go-Go in
LA. Yeah, that's right. LA Guns and Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue and all those guys.
Yeah, American punk was always over in New York.
Yeah, the Ramones and those guys were they?
Yeah, but even like Talking Heads and Lou Reed. Well, I suppose it's barely punk, but Iggy Pop. And punk was very different in New York to the British punk.
British punk.
Which kicked it all off.
Yeah, they were very different. Hey, one was all studs, metal studs, and Doc Martens and screaming, and the other was had a different tinge to it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of that punk all came out of sort of a reggae rhythm, beat, whatever you'd call it, and so they're that the British side of it, you could always hear it in the accent of the singers, and but the American punk, I can't remember. It's something I've seen. There was a thing on Talking Heads that sort of showed where they came from, was more I keep thinking a jazz sort of background, but
Talking Heads, yeah, definitely. They've got that kind of like a jazz feel in them somewhere.
And what was that one with Katie Pierce, Rock Lobster?
The B-52s.
B-52s.
Yeah.
That was same sort of era.
They were late 80s, early 90s. They were huge. So
early 80s.
Early 80s, were they? Oh, right, because I remember like 89, 90, they came out with, not Rock Lobster, maybe that was the album, Love Shack. That was huge for that for a summer back around then. Yeah.
Good old days.
Yeah, the good old days. Yeah. I'm surprised I can remember too much from that, actually, those days. That was partying pretty hard back then when all those bands were around.
Yeah, that was the main motivation back then, wasn't it? To get a bit troppo and
That was
a lot troppo than we should have been. I had a real death wish on the pits when I was young.
yeah.
It was madness. It seemed to me, and I don't know if Aussie culture was similar, but ours was about like I say, it seemed to me it was about getting as pissed as you could, as quick as you could, and that's where the thing happened.
Yeah. Whatever it was.
Because I had no idea what it was, but I was pretty keen to chase it and find out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just
you
ended up under a bloody bush most of the time.
Well, that's it. But you do. I mean, alcohol. You get wild on alcohol. You get pissed. You get wild. And if you're 18, 19, 20, you're fit and healthy. You're out late. Being wild's fun. It's damn good fun. Can you get yourself in trouble? But hell of a lot of fun. That's why we used to go and do it all the time, because it was fun.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a funny thing, and it's like it was a pursuit of fun, but at a hell of a risk.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Like it was never something I could do. You'd approach doing sober. I mean, just the amount of like I can tell you a little story, which the boys love, of course, is leaving a pub. For some reason, I was just a little bit behind the lads. They'd walked off up the road, and I don't know if I was trying to address something in the pub before I left. And so I'm like, 50 or 100 metres behind the boys, and they're walking like 200 metres, cross the main street of Hamilton to the car, and they're getting in the car and start up and getting ready to drive home. And they were sort of thinking, well, we're leaving Jono to it. We'll catch him tomorrow. And it was a very wet night, and I can't remember if it was foggy as such, but like these lads had got into this car, which was an old Corolla, I think it was, and that started. David started the car up, and they're just off up the road. And at the same time, I've seen them all in the car. I've seen the lights come on. I've seen the car started to move. So I thought, do a bit of Starsky and Hutch, And so they're coming up the road towards me, maybe first gear, just hitting second. And I see the car coming up like this. So I sort of did a dive roll onto the bonnet of the car, which sent me flying up over the roof of the car and splat on the road, and of course, for the boys in the car, they barely even saw it coming, because all they saw was his body go flying across the bonnet and hit the windscreen and pitch off into the air. And so they're all inside the car, just, fuck, what the hell was that? And they open the doors, and it's me lying on the ground, so bundle me into the car, and off we went. It's like, but that sort of shit, you're just not going to do it when you're sober.
No.
Let alone, get away with not hurting yourself really badly.
Oh, yeah, I agree. If I was to trawl through my memory, the stories of incidents like that, there's too many of them for you to actually feel like you somehow survived them all without some help, because, there's plenty of times where you're just taking risks, yeah. But that's part of growing up, I suppose. And well, to answer your question, yeah, the culture when I was growing up, very similar, Like we were 17 going out 4 nights a week.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah. We found a little wine bar in town, and it was really I would say, looking back at it now, I would say it was like a middle-aged pickup joint. It's where the singles in their 30s and 40s and that in the town would have gone to pick up. For whatever reason, at age 17, we all discovered it in our last year of high school, and we kind of took over. And so we would just roll down there. For them, it was great, because suddenly instead of having this quiet Wednesday night crowd, they might do, I don't know, a couple $100 in drinks. Suddenly they were doing a fortune, because we were dragging in 20 or 30 teenagers who were just going ballistic there.
And you say 4 nights a week, like you can troppo 4 nights a week?
No, not getting, no, but like this is at the end of our final year, But yeah, we're going out with Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights to that place. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
They would have loved you.
Yeah, they did. that we had a drink named after us. Well, it was called Janine Special. And I remember because
What'd she do for that?
oh, no, it was just Janine was the main barmaid who worked there. On my 18th birthday, I went in there, and your drinking age is 18 in Australia. So we go in there, whoa, everyone's celebrating. It's like, why? It's Tim's birthday. Well, how old are you? 18. I remember the owner going, oh, you little shit, you're barred from a month ago. Because we've been in there drinking there for like the last couple of months by then, I suppose, or at underage. But anyhow, yeah, that's what it was like, eh?
Well, yeah, and the thread I was pulling was the idea of a search for fun, and why fun is along a continuum of danger.
Oh,
it's a sort of teenage
thing, they're linked, aren't they?
Yeah,
fun and danger and risk, definitely.
And I suppose it's sort of like that Jordan Peterson idea of kids exploring their potential in play, with play fighting or fighting or whatever it is, or even just playing hide and seek, or it's an exploration.
Well, that's right. Hide and seek. The game the kids love playing the most, well, one of the most, is Spotlight outside at night time. Or if they haven't got friends over, if we turn all the lights in the bedrooms and the hallway off, and they go and hide, and you've got to walk down and find them. And that, because it's that tension's building. They're hiding behind their door, and Dad's walking in and might find them, and it's just that excitement builds. Yeah. It's fun, and there's thrill. Not really, I guess there's not so much risk in that, but
and it's risk in a safe environment.
Yeah,
because you're around your home.
Yeah,
but you're in the darkness.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, it
becomes scary.
I remember being scared of the dark as a kid. It's like something unknown, and it's like my son. He's just getting to the 7th book of the Narnia series.
Oh yeah,
and I said, which one's your favourite so far, or which one's the best? And he said, well, evidently this is the best one. I said, okay, what's your favourite so far? I can't remember the name of the particular one. I said, why? And he said, he started by saying it was dark, and then he went on to say it was scary. And then he went on and said, well, but not much of it. And so, okay, what makes that one book out of 6 so far the best is a very small amount of the most dark.
Is the scary part of it?
Yeah.
It's like the Harry Potters. I don't know if you've watched them. I've watched there's 7 or 8 of them in the series. I've watched the videos with the kids, and they get, I think, progressively darker. But they're interesting, and the kids love them. I'm like, is this too scary for you guys? And they're like, no, it's not too scary. This is too good. If we say it's scary, you won't let us watch.
There is that. What's one? Oh, I'm struggling to think of the name of the title.
One of the Harry Potter ones.
Yeah, it's probably the 5th book.
Oh, I can't remember the titles to them all. Prisoner of Somewhere and the Philosopher's Stone, and I don't know.
Someone, I read the book, and I read it because someone said, keep in mind, this is a parallel of Nazi Germany.
Oh, really?
And you read it through that lens.
Right.
It's like, holy shit, yeah.
Oh, and as in someone was playing like the Hitler role, one of the characters was in there? Or...
No, more just the nature of the way people treated each other and then grouped together and then treated each other differently as a consequence of a change of ideology.
Right, yeah. The really interesting guy on YouTube, Ryan Chapman, he's got a podcast, and he does a really good job of explaining things like Nazism and fascism and socialism, Marxism, that kind of thing. Yeah, really, really interesting guy. That's a pretty interesting way to re-watch that film through that lens.
Yeah. I'd be keen to watch the film. Haven't read the book. I'm struggling to think of the bloody name, but it'll come to me shortly. Yeah.
So hey, today, so the merge happened today.
It actually happened yesterday. Yeah. Much ado about nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not that clued up on all things computer, like, yeah, I'm a surface user, that's for sure. But much more keenly interested in crypto in general. And whilst I still see it as a major technological feat, I can't say that from a programmer's angle. I mean, you'd probably understand more about it than I would from that end.
Oh, I haven't looked into the detail of what they've done in the coding side of it. I've just had a bit of an overview of just understanding the change between the proof of work to the proof of stake that they've implemented there. I mean, as I loosely understand it, your proof of work, it's effectively a competition. Everyone who's going to be a miner, you're going into a competition to go and be able to validate a transaction for the block. And with your proof of stake, you're randomly selected to go and validate. So I think that's where they get the power saving, the energy saving in moving from proof of work to proof of stake, is that you're no longer doing these big computations. Like, everyone's doing big computations to try to race each other to mine to win. Now it's like, well, if you've stuck up your 32 Ethereum, you can be a validator, but we're randomly going to choose, I don't know how many they choose, 1,000, million, 128, I don't know. And so it's only you guys that get chosen that then get to validate, therefore the power consumption is a lot less. So
yeah, so it knocks out the high energy computing component of the solving the equation, which obviously, that, as I understand it, there's not so much an equation to solve anymore when they go to proof of stake. It's more just a case of completing the block. It's more like just a rudimentary succession of information.
You've hit right on the thing that in my brief reading around, because when I knew you were coming on and we'd be talking about this, I was like, I need to learn a little bit more about what's actually happening with the merge. It's exactly that key thing is, so what in Ethereum and moving to proof of stake, is it that those validators now do to validate? They talk about, they shard them out. There's 128 shards go in and get collected to form a transaction. But what processing is it that they actually do? Because the other, when I kept on looking for what's the benefit of proof of stake over proof of work, the number one thing that will always turn up as the benefit is that it's greener. It's less energy used. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Pardon me, but is it safer? Is it more secure than proof of work? Because proof of work, you've actually got to solve it. You have to do the work to validate the transaction. Proof of stake, it seems like there's this slightly unexplained feature of it where they say you're disincentivized from trying to generate fraud because you have to put up your credits as stake. If you want to be a validator, you put up your 32 credit or whatever, Ethereum, whatever it is, how much have you put up? And if you bet on the right block, you retain your money. If you were to bet on the wrong block, i.e. if you tried to fraudulently say, hey, this should be the next block in the blockchain, and that wasn't then supported and didn't get the consensus, you lose what you've put up and staked. But it does feel to me like you could get a couple of big organizations and go, okay, we're going to go for the 51% here. Yeah. And this is the other part I didn't understand. If you bet wrong, so let's say, let's just say to validate this transaction in proof of stake, the answer is X. But I want to say the answer is Y, because if I say the answer is Y in that transaction, then it'll say, give me 1,000,000 Ethereum. So if I convince 51% to say, this is the right transaction, maybe there's some other safeguard, but with my limited knowledge, doesn't that mean that we're the consensus? That becomes the next block, therefore that is correct, which means we don't lose what we staked. We just frauded the system, and we kept our money, and we just put in a transaction that didn't happen. It's a 51% problem, but which is not easy to achieve, but it feels like it's achievable.
Is that still achievable with proof of stake?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it, but I do know that, or I'm fairly sure, the difference with proof of work is that it's an automated process where the miner is providing computational energy to manage a system in motion, and that's it. There's no interference. They either complete the block and gain the reward for doing so. As a part of an automated process, there's no other option.
Yeah.
With proof of stake, so yeah, you stake your coins, which are, like you said, there's that 32 ETH minimum, which will change. It will drop back once they like, the process of sharding is going to be what allows them to run their system more efficiently, but that isn't going to come online for some time. And they have a disincentive process which is called slashing, and so for any bad actor in the system, they will, if someone chooses not to validate a transaction for whatever reason, and that doesn't fit the consensus of the group, then they will slash.
And is that where they lose their stake? Is that?
Yeah, as I understand it, it's some sort of trimming first,
right?
And that would be to say, look, you haven't played our game.
Yeah.
So, you're not validating the system in accord with what everyone thinks is a valid transaction. So we'll chip away a bit of your stash.
Yeah.
And
then that's the disincentive.
That's the disincentive. And then if that occurs regularly with the same stakeholder, they'll turf them out, which I imagine means, here's your ETH, see you later.
Yeah.
So that in itself, or if I just backtrack a little, the idea that everything has a component of consensus as opposed to an automated thing that is, completely taken out of the hands of it's at its front end, it's a monetary system, and what Bitcoin has been created for is to prevent fingers in the till, someone being able to manipulate the currency system.
Yeah.
Ethereum has taken the first step towards providing a fingers in the till opportunity, as far as I can see, as opposed to, well, let's just go sideways again. Cardano has a system which rewards good actors, and effectively that's where Ethereum is, and well, proof of stake in general has merit, I believe, or I feel, is it you bring community spirit to it. You bring the idea that we're all in this because we want a better, fairer system, and everyone works together to provide that better, fairer system. Then, of course, that's where our fiat money system began and has now began to go crooked. So who knows? But yeah, the difference with Cardano is that they have a reward system for for being concise and accurate with your validations. I don't know how to word that a little better. But yeah, positive side of the ledger rather than slashing, disincentive.
As a disincentive,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, the technology, the fact that a couple of things are interesting about it. One, that they're distributed, or at least they should be. And again, I'm not sure with Ethereum. Is that a challenge with Ethereum, that it's not actually completely distributed? That I can't think of the guy's name.
Buterin.
The
Vitalik.
young, the young Russian guy. Vitalik. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Does he still hold some sort of control over the operation? Not only hold control over a lot of ETH, but actually over a centralized control over
pretty much. I mean, they've got a dev team that is, I'd imagine, it'd be huge, but and he's the central brain that, you know.
So that's interesting, because it almost feels like that's an inherent risk in Ethereum, that he could just turn to a bad actor at any stage and say, I'm out here, I'm going to go jump on one of Elon's rockets and go to Mars and take all this money with me, and nothing you can do about it. Possibly, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like it. Bitcoin feels as though it's distributed. There's no one who actually holds that power. So that's interesting that they're distributed in the way that they work. The other interesting thing is that this drive to move away from the way they have proven themselves to be secure for a number of years, proof of work, is energy. It's because they just, it's an interesting thing. To begin with, it was like, it's crypto, you could make a heap of money, it's interesting, is it real money, this sort of thing, which suddenly turned into, there's problems with this. They just consume too much energy. Bitcoin consumes as much energy as a small country, which, it's an interesting take that's now why it's changing, because they're moving to approaches where you have to do less computing cycles and burn less energy. So I just, on that, I was wondering, so are there a whole bunch of Ethereum miners who are now going, what am I going to do with these thousands of GPUs, which are just sitting here, no longer required for mining? Like, is the price of GPUs globally now going to drop?
Oh, it already is. NVIDIA, the stock price of NVIDIA is already
being hit.
Tanking.
Yeah. Is it? Yeah. Just weird, hey? It's just weird. This.
Yeah, and that's ahead of time. Well, I suppose it probably is in step with the forecast on sales, because over the next while, as proof of work phases out of the Ethereum system, there will be less people buying those chips. So
the other thing, these graphics chips are a weird thing too. So graphics chips, they'll be taking a hit now, whether they plan for it or not, because of this happening. I guess if they really knew the market, they would have had guys watching this and saying, when is this going to happen? Because it's going to give us a hit. But AI loves GPUs as well. For the type of processing AI does, GPUs are what it wants. And I think just last week, the Biden administration said to NVIDIA, stop selling your GPUs to China. Because they want to put the brakes on Chinese AI. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the US and the idea that they have got any control on anything right now, how many times are they going to shoot themselves in the foot by trying to use some sort of trade war to control a foreign power? They've committed the biggest series of errors over the last 20 years that has led to the position they're now in. The Ford idea that development happens on the factory floor. What's the expression? Invention happens on the factory floor. It was an old axiom that Henry Ford sort of first observed, and because his work is on the factory line, they're all doing the same shit day in, day out. Maybe they're in charge of putting the steering wheel inside the new Model T, and then one guy would go, this here would be better if we just went for a central nut instead of 3 around this point. And so, boom, they re-engineer that, time saving. So America has outsourced, take Apple for example, outsourced the assembly of Apple iPhones, and then they were then collecting all the bits and pieces and putting them together in China, and then the Chinese worked out on the factory floor, well, we can make that component better, and that component better, and that component better. So now the components are all coming from just around the corner, and all the labour is already on shore there. Apple has nowhere to turn. They can't pull out.
Yeah.
They can't get the product made anywhere else. And the Chinese have everything to do that product better, and they are. Same with AI. They're clearly ahead in the supercomputer race. They have built the fastest supercomputer that functions at 1,000 times quicker than any other computer. And so that gives them the leg up in AI and in anything. Obviously it's just development, one-off thing, but, that's the front end, and they are on top of it. So, chips for cars. Chips for cars are generally coming from China. So the cars and the production factories in the US can't roll out the door because they can't get the chips. So the cars are completed, but they can't.
They're missing the control chips.
Yeah. So the idea that the US is going to somehow...
It's very intertwined, isn't it? If they say, hey, you can't have these GPUs, you can't have these graphics processing units, well, then China turns around and says, well, you can't have these chips. Oh, okay, so now all of our Fords can't roll off the floor. It's like, that was the whole globalization thing, Everyone's intertwined for trade, which is considered to be a good thing in terms, it's meant to lift the cost of living for everyone. But you're right, if you try and step out of that, it's a very intricate web that's been woven there that you've now got to try and untangle with it.
It's like rare earth metals, particularly for targeting systems for missiles and the likes. It's all Chinese.
Right.
And, so if the US wants to build weapons or weapons guidance systems, they've got to have a trading account with the Chinese. And, of course, they start pushing the Chinese around. Well, they'll say, well, I'm not giving you that. Yeah.
That's a challenge they're saying Russia's got now, too. It's with chips. Because of the sanctions, they've got to get chips to, what is it, to drive their missiles or their air defense systems and those kind of things. As they get older and start to break down, it's the processing chips that they're struggling with. Yeah. Have you seen on Twitter any of the AI art that's coming out these days?
No, it's been produced.
Whoa.
Well, I know about the music.
Oh, yeah. I haven't checked out the music. Is it?
Well, that's probably it's history now. I think it was in the 90s. There was a guy that started making music. He developed a program and set the machine to it and loaded in a whole lot of classical music and said, do your best to write some new music, and out it pops, and he put it around and people said, oh yeah, that's quite good, I like that. And then it stepped up and up and up from there to the point where they got all these aficionados into a room and said, let's have a competition between the computer and the musicians, and the computer was winning hands down.
I don't know if you can do this, but if you can't, this has got to be a great idea for a website or an app, is to be able to just say, okay, like I really like this band back in the 80s. Like say you chose Devo. I really like Devo. They're not around anymore. They're not doing songs anymore. But if you could go to a website and just say, give me a new Devo album, and the AI would just go, all right, I know what like Devo would sound like. Let me give you some new gear, brother.
Exactly that.
And you just like
that answers the start of our conversation. The idea that you want to put a or my idea that I wanted to try and mix a bunch of old Sabbath tracks or something, and you know,
Yeah.
my vision was always that I'd take probably a lot of the bass lines out of Black Sabbath and then just mix it with some of the all-time favourite riffs. Well, yeah, AI can do that for you.
Well,
I'll just sit back and wait another couple of years.
yeah, this art that's coming out, man, it is beautiful and amazing, and looks like the kind of stuff you really imagine when you're tripping out. That's the kind of thing you will see. Like some of it's just fantastic artwork.
3D.
This is all 2D, what I'm seeing coming through on Twitter, but I'm sure it's just doing 3D stuff as well. But I think these guys are basically have got the AI to a point where they're just putting in just a prompt, and the prompt would be, like 60s film, couple leaving each other, rainy or something, and this picture you get, it's like it'll be shot in like a 60s looking film, like James Dean kind of guy, and the girl and the guy kind of being pulled apart as they're moving across the street,
cool.
and you're just like, whoa, it got that from this. Geez, I saw a picture of an AI being asked about. This was a picture of a guy in, I want to say the White House somewhere. I don't know where it was, but it was like a big old building like that, standing on a set of scales, the big scales, this big, and you stand on them.
Yeah.
And Obama was standing behind him, and he'd put his foot on the scale, and so the guy's looking at the scales. It's kind of funny. You can see Obama's got a laugh on his face, and everyone's got a bit of a smile on their face. But it's a single snapshot picture. They were asking this AI about the picture. They'd shown it the picture. And they're saying, "What do you think's going on here? Well, where is it?" And it said, "Oh, it's in a library or a school." And you're like, "Yep, that could be what it is, like an old library or something." What's going on? And it asked a question. I said, "What's the guy standing on?" And it said, "I'm not sure." And then the person said, "Oh, he's standing on a scale." And it went, "Yes, you're right. That is a scale. What do you think's going on?" "I think they're playing a joke on him." And you're like, "Oh, why do you think that?" "Well, they're all laughing." It's like, this is sort of insightful stuff from a picture, a photo. Because that's exactly what I had picked up from looking at you. Like, Obama's playing a joke on one of his security details standing on the scale, and everyone's having a giggle, a bit of a laugh about it. And this AI was just looking at that and picking it up. And the way that is it AlphaGo or whatever the AI that was developed to play games. So it now, the way that it learns is they don't give it any rule, like to play a game. Like you can give it any game. I think internet game
Works the rules out.
It works the rules out by watching the video. You just play it video of people playing it. And it then takes that and tries things based upon that. And because it can run so quickly, it does 1 trillion operations over the course of 3 months. And then or more like it does 1 million in the course of 3 minutes. And 15 minutes later, it's pretty good. 2 hours later, it's great. By the end of the day, it's the best player of that game that's ever existed.
Have you seen the doco?
The AlphaGo one? Yes.
Great, isn't it?
Yeah, it is great. Frightening, but great.
Yeah. I mean, I was just blown away how it changed a game that's been played for thousands of years.
Yeah.
In an instant.
Yeah.
In timescales.
Yeah.
Not only did it beat the champion, but changed the way that people play the game.
Yeah. And did something, I think the guy who invented it was surprised in one of the games. It got to a point where it made a move with like...
Everyone went, no, that's no good.
Kind of felt like this thing's just guessing now, doesn't know what to do, but led it to a win a few moves later.
Yeah, and that's what changed the strategy.
Yeah.
That's pretty radical.
Oh, man. Some of that stuff. Drones, drone technology, swarms of drones,
that idea that, have you seen, well, and another thought that came to me there is, does that mean the AI are going to bleed out the NFT market or just saturate it? If what you're saying is that good, and you look at what people are paying for, like Beeple work or something like that,
there's
69 million, was it the pastiche one?
Wasn't
one piece of art, and so hook up the AI, get them producing that art. It either devalues the existing or creates a whole new market that goes through the roof.
To answer your question, today on Twitter, I saw a post from someone, and they're forming a collective of artists to try to find a way to restrict the artist's work, which is available on the internet, being used in databases to feed the AIs, the AI artists.
Give up.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's what I thought. You're pushing uphill here. But the thing is, the reason they're doing that is because the art that's coming out from this AI is just great, and others, other cool because they can just interpret so well. People. I saw some stuff that were like Verdun 1916, and so it just produces these screenshots of kind of what you imagine from what you've seen of what Verdun looks like.
What's Verdun?
The big battle in World War I in France, an area in France where that was like the meat grinder, where they had some of the most intense World War I battles.
Ardennes?
The Ardennes was another area, but Verdun was a big one.
Right.
I
don't know.
Yeah, but as an example, they also, I think one of the other ones was they had it was like Franco-Prussian War from 1870 or something, and just the horses and French uniforms and all these things are just well constructed. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, just like the idea that it's developing that quickly. It'd be interesting to see if you could plug it into your head and replay a mushroom trip or something. Wouldn't that be great?
Well, yeah.
Because you can't take that with you very far. You trip away and you see this and that, but you can't explain it to anyone.
No.
Well, you can, but it's difficult.
It doesn't.
That's the fun.
Doesn't get anywhere near the actual experience. Yeah.
But it would be nice to be able to externalize that. Great.
Well, there's Elon Musk's Neuralink.
Yeah.
So you combine that with AI. Reminds me of a book a friend of mine, Stefan, wrote 10 or 15 years ago, which is along those lines of just someone having some sort of AI technology plugged into the back of their skull, and what sort of abilities that would give you.
Yeah, well, it's the cyborg time, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you get a little thing, you plug it in the back of your head, it's connected to the internet, it's got AI running stuff, it takes inputs from your eyes and tells you, oh no, that's not happening, this is happening, do this, do that.
That's like I've got an implant in which eye? This one. I've got a lens implanted in my right eye. They work out what sort of prescription you need, get a lens made in Germany, put a hole through the side of your cornea with a diamond tip scalpel, and they put in this scroll. It's rolled up, they feed it in the hole, and then open it up inside your eye. So, what's not to say that that's not sort of.
It won't be far, and that'll have a heads-up display on it connected to the Internet of Things, and you'll just be walking around seeing data, whatever you want to see. There's again tying back to this friend of mine, Stefan. He was working for a company that were building like human sort of head-based interfaces for people with cerebral palsy. I think that's what it was for. People who'd lost motor control, and so to give them the ability to be able to interact with others and be able to choose words from a menu of words, and being able to speak and keep conversations going. I remember talking to him about that, and it's really interesting things. It's like, well, okay, so if you could give these guys some glasses and you could project into the glasses, then you could provide them maybe just by eye movement where they're looking, could be responses which would come out through a vocalization unit so that they could communicate. And when you think about a lot of conversations, general day-to-day conversations, going down the street and buying something from the supermarket, it's all like, hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm good, nice to see you. It's kind of a limited range of conversation. It wouldn't be too hard to pick those things. But now with AI, you could go, oh, okay, this conversation is rolling around to another topic we're talking about. Oh, we're talking about football now, are we? Okay, let me give you the things in the past you've spoken about in football, or the common terms, or it might be like click on the did you see the Aussies get robbed last night in the Bledisloe Cup? And you click on that, and did you see that? Just amazing ability to help people who can't do those things with the physical body they've got.
Yeah, well, certainly that idea there was Stephen Hawking communicated by something the read off his retina.
Did he?
I think so.
Yeah. Or eye movement or something,
he
was
had
it?
that little panel just here.
Ah.
And he would look at that and he would manipulate it with his eyes.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And that's what provided his speech.
Yeah.
Which, incidentally, I watched Vitalik Buterin on a small video clip a couple of nights ago. And I don't know, he was probably a few years ago. The guy might have been 16, 17, just a young kid, but he'd already started on Ethereum at the time. And they're asking him about the effect on global markets and currencies and all that sort of thing. I mean, the guy was all over it at that age.
Yeah.
But the thing that cracked me up was he sounded just like Stephen Hawking.
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Not just like, but just
similar.
Yeah. It had sort of that granular sound to it, and quite.
Is that just his natural voice is like that?
Yeah, maybe he's changed.
His voice is broken.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, it just sounded so. It sounded like individual words as opposed to the flowing speech of just when you're banding around.
Have you watched Elon Musk in some of his interviews, some of his Joe Rogan interviews? Have you listened to his voice, his speech patterns?
I've seen the one where he smoked the weed.
Right. I don't know if it was that one, but if I was going to suggest that anyone is a cyborg, it's a robot. It's Elon, because just the way his head moves when he thinks, when he's reaching for something, and the way his speech patterns go, they're unusual. Not all the time. I've seen him in other interviews. There's another guy, I can't think of his name, but he does a really good. This guy's focused on rockets, and so he's got to know Elon, and now he gets access to Elon when Elon walks around the what's it, Starbase, whatever it is that SpaceX. Whenever he walks around there and they're testing new Raptor engines and that, this guy gets to go in there and talk to him about it. And in those conversations, he sounds like a regular dude. But in some of the times he was being posed questions by Joe Rogan, I was like, is that guy a robot? He could be.
Yeah, I'm probably doing it myself. Like I don't spend much time in front of a camera, so I'm not a fan of my own voice and projection and that sort of thing. But I do know when I'm thinking, I do stop and slow down, and if it's something that I'm trying to construct in my head and be accurate with it, well, I'll take that time. So maybe it's that same sort of thing where, and like people are asking him some pretty hefty questions. Yeah,
that's true. That is absolutely true. Everyone does it. You slow down to think through, but the way he does it, it just gives the impression that this guy could be a robot. If someone was going to be a robot.
Well, he is a big stud as well,
Yeah.
You saw that thing recently with the waitress, the air hostie.
No, I didn't see that.
Some birds suing him for $250,000, I think, which doesn't sound like a lot in America, but because he asked her if he could have a shag. Oh no, he was going to give her $250,000 to shag him in a plane.
Oh,
I think that's how it went. But
I hadn't heard it. I do know that he wants to repopulate. I think he's got 8 kids already.
Well, that'd be good. It's better than Bill Gates' idea that we need to
depopulate.
What the fuck is with that fruitcake?
Yeah, there's something.
And it's
trying to get us to eat bugs, but buying up all the grazing land through the US and around the world. What's going on here?
Injection programs for everyone. He's got us all sorted.
Yeah.
He's looking out for us big time.
Yeah.
Thanks, Billy.
No, I'm okay, Bill.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Try it the old-fashioned way.
Someone was telling me the other day that Microsoft revenue is $23 million an hour. Every hour, every day, $23 million revenue.
That's just what is being collected at the till.
I think so, yeah. They've got costs, of course, but whether that's right or not. But this friend of mine was telling me, he was like, that's what their revenue is, $23 million an hour.
Yeah, and if he's the majority shareholder, I don't know what his majority shareholding is, but like it's sizable, because you know how he dumped out... was it Paul Allen who was his partner in crime?
Paul, yeah.
And, because he tipped him out in
It is years ago.
early 2000s, was it?
Mm.
And so at that point he took over his shareholding,
Right.
and
Oh, yeah. I can remember back in the... When would this have been? This would have been the late 90s, talking to my cousin at the time. And at that stage, I think Bill Gates was making 16 million US a day. I think that's what he was personally,
Right.
his wealth was accruing at, 16 million a day. Now his company makes 23 million revenue an hour. Yeah.
And that probably is, they're doing that sum on a 24-hour cycle.
Yeah. So a fair chunk of that would be going to him. But he's not...
That's 500 mil
Yeah.
a day.
Every day.
Hmm.
But then he's not the richest guy. Like, Elon's richer than he is.
Yeah.
That's Tesla, the cars, I guess, is where he's making most of that money from.
Well, is it?
Well, SpaceX can't be making him much money, can it? There's people investing in it, I suppose, but...
Well, yeah, and if you
Is Starlink... Maybe Starlink's making some money now the satellites are up. I don't know.
I know. The Anonymous would tell you that he's making the lion's share of his money through government grants and the like.
I heard he got 4 or 5 billion in government grants over time, but that's not 200 billion. Like, that's
no, but it does lube the wheels.
Well, yeah, true. But I guess if maybe that's not a bad investment when you look in government country size. You go, okay, we give him 4 billion, and this guy turns that into 200 billion. It's like, okay, that was an okay investment.
Good return.
Yeah,
yeah,
made sense.
Yeah, I've just got to find a way to convince Jacinda
to give you 4 billion.
To give me a proportional amount of value, like scale down the economy by 100 times. So, what's that? 20 million. I'm due that, aren't I?
Fair enough. Yeah.
I've got a project here. Yeah. It's.
Wait, tell me about. Wait, hang on 1 second. I'm just going to grab myself a drink. Did you want a drink?
Is that thing on?
Is it on? No, I can put it on.
Yeah, turn it on. Yeah, good. Actually, I'll go. What do you got there?
One of those.
What's the
lager?
Yeah. Cheers.
There we go. When Trace said, IOV, I was like, what's IOV? I was like, is that Internet of Vehicles? Is what I was thinking. I was trying to think of what it was.
Oh, right. You launched off the idea of Internet of Things.
Yeah,
you went to vehicles.
Yeah, when I was like trying to think of like what the V stand for. V. And I was thinking vehicles.
Virgins.
I think you have to be Muslim, don't you, to have the Internet of Virgins?
Well, AI could really take them somewhere, couldn't it? Providing a link to those next world virgins in the current world.
Well, maybe. But yeah, I went vehicles. So I did I kind of Googled around and I was like, IOV, that's all I came up with. But it's not that. It's Internet of Voting.
Voters, voting, same thing. And it's just something I've been chucking around for a few years, sort of thinking.
Is it blockchain-based voting so that you can make sure people's votes aren't tampered with? Is that the idea? Or?
No, completely going away from our current democratic paradigm and thinking about a fully decentralized system of civic administration, like rather than having this centralized power structure that we've got, where you got
two parties
at the top, or Biden at the top, and exactly that whole polarized system which throws up nothing but bickering. Moving to a sort of an issues-based spread of civic administration,
which has always been the idea. If you get away from this popularity contest of I like that guy or I like that girl, or what's their policy? Do you know what their policy is? What do they plan on doing in that space? I have no idea, but I like the look of them. Well, someone told me they were good and the other guys were bad, so I'm voting for them.
Exactly, and they are, like Jordan Peterson. I recently saw an interview where he spends a lot of time talking to various politicians, and he said, you think it's easy being a congressman in the US. And he went on to explain, that they put in huge hours. And then he went on to explain they spend 30 to 40 hours a week campaigning.
Yeah.
Well, fuck me.
Hey,
Put those campaigning hours aside, you got a regular working week.
yeah.
And then you've got some dude who can actually be effective and not have his fingers in the till all day long.
And imagine if we, at our normal jobs, were like, oh, actually, most of the time, I'm just running around people on the street saying, hey, can you pay me money so I can stay in my job? Like, not doing any work, just trying to get to stay in the job.
And bullshitting.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing.
What do you want? Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly what you want. That's
Kissing
what we're gonna do.
babies and telling bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And as a function, playing off, there's everything in the modern world that's about creating division in order to get attention. And that seems to be the political sphere 101, whereas the sort of thing I'm dreaming of is it's just issue by issue. Pick a portfolio.
No. The environment. There's one that's...
The environment.
All right.
Yeah. And then pick a sector of the environment.
Usage of water or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, which is pertinent at the moment with the three waters thing, which I don't really understand. I've not paid it much attention. Have you looked at it?
Only a little. My loose understanding is that there is an organisation being formed where they will assume control of all the local water supplies. So instead of, say, your local council, who may have invested over the last 60 years in your water infrastructure and managing it, that ownership and I think the value of that infrastructure will go to this Three Waters group, and they will then control that. And could be completely wrong, but that's...
Yeah, and so the interesting thing for me is there any privatisation in the pipeline? No pun intended.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
So yeah, let's say we break that down further, and we got to your particular local water supply, and you wanted to have your say on what you wanted to have done with it. There would be so at one end there's an infrastructure of people that are working on it at present. The other people are in, the state representatives, right down to the guy who's going down to the reservoir and testing the water. That wouldn't change. What might change is the information or the manner at which the people in general want to direct how things are managed. At the incoming end, the voter end, would be there's a multi-tiered sort of platform that provides ability to make proposals, comment on proposals, or just support proposals by saying, yeah, I think that dude's got the argument I want to hear, or have pushed further up the line, and sort of like a likes system on Reddit or Twitter, whatever it is. The likes percolate up, coalescing around the strongest group ideas, and at the top end you'd feed into this some sort of vote counting apparatus that would show which of the arguments is most desirable, and from that the policy is formed, then shoots back up and delivers the instructions
to them being enacted.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like that deals with that problem of democracy. Like, we say democracy is, it's a great thing. Everyone, one person, one vote. But then, if that crowd, if that democracy is led by someone who ultimately is going the wrong way, then your democracy is working, and that most people are saying, yeah, we want to jump off this cliff. But if you're in the minority going, that's not a good idea, doesn't matter. Democracy says we're going to do it because most of us agreed. It's like, that's the problem with democracy there. People say, everyone has one vote. Like, well, maybe people should be educated on the topics before they can vote.
Yeah, and therein lies one of the major stumbling blocks with what I'm proposing is voter participation at a level that's appropriate, and is appropriate from they are making good decisions without being lemmings, and that so they're not going to be drawn into groupthink is what I mean by the lemmings thing. And I've lost my train of thought there. It was something that was going to the other side of the equation.
Well, is it to do with like them being informed as well?
Yeah, so what I envisage is that they are needing to jump through a certain amount of hoops to participate within the voting system. Like, they need to show that they do have a handle on whatever's being voted upon. And that also is something that will help to moderate who participates where. Because if you think, we just took an example where we took environment, dropped it down to water, dropped it down to local water, and then talked about how that could be administered.
Yeah.
So you've got...
You probably want people in that local area voting on that, not necessarily people from this other side of the country if they're voting on the local water for this area.
Absolutely. And then all the way back up the chain, there's, as you go further up the chain, you get into broader categories. So it's sort of national level administration rather than city by city or whatever. And so, but what I was highlighting there was the distribution of portfolios, sectors, local. If one person wants to try and get around every sector down to a local level, well, they're going to be there forever, just trying to participate to make things happen. And so that sort of almost creates a disincentive to busybodies, let's say. Someone that just wants to be a power crazy person and get in there and shift that policy, shift that. I want my way here, here, and here. When you've got such a broad range of portfolios at so many levels, no one's going to be able to get around and try and influence everything. All they can do is, they can try, but they won't have a shit show.
Yeah.
I might have gone too far ahead in the whole development of the idea there for that. But do you get what I mean?
Yeah, it kind of takes me back to what we were talking about with Bitcoin before, where you sort of want to get the system, if you can, and I don't know if you can, because this might be a different type of problem, but to where, with Bitcoin, you solve the problem. Like we were saying before, it's hard to hijack because you're actually doing the computation to solve the problem, to validate it, which in this model here, if you could find the solution to these problems broadly with all of these people somehow putting in a consensus or finding a consensus, it takes out that one person who can say, oh no, we're going to do it this way.
Absolutely.
We're going to do it this way. Yeah. It's like, no, these guys are actually finding now, if you find the consensus brings you to that, that's democracy. If you can somehow take it the next step to the way they find the consensus is by solving the problem for the best outputs, then you've got a really, really good system. That's the challenge, though. I don't know how you get that level of people solving the problem, because what is the solution to the water supply in a town? I mean, you want clean water, you want it to run all the time, you don't want it to run out in summertime. Somehow got to like factor some solution to that which we can actually deliver by people broadly getting a consensus on that, and then hopefully you're like, that's the thing we need to do.
Yeah, and in that regard, it's, do you give a fuck? Do you are you interested enough to put in some effort to make the change, to improve the system? Do you want to do the work yourself? And in that regard, again, if we take the dissemination of portfolios and sectors and levels, it's already operating. We have our society. It's busy doing its thing. People know their roles. People know what they're interested in. Some people are more motivated than others to roll their sleeves up and contribute to make things better for their community or for, a broader goal, whatever it is. This will enable them to do it and be effective and not have to run around. Oh my God! Part of my motivation to do this was being nominated the janitor at a local sports club in Belmont years ago, and a janitor was the name that my mate gave it. Once I told him, I said, "Oh yeah, they've asked me to be the facilities manager at the local club," and he says, "The janitor." It's like, oh yeah, you're probably right. Anyway, it's that meant fixing a few things here and there, and going along to some meetings once a month or thereabouts, and my God, a meeting consisted of an hour and a half or 2 hours, where you went along and 80% of that meeting was reading the minutes from the previous meeting, and then you discussed new business. How much time have you just wasted?
There's no incentive in a lot of those meetings to actually achieve an outcome. People have the ability to call a meeting. Okay, we'll call a meeting. We'll get 5 people or 15 or 50 people together, and we won't really figure out what we're trying to achieve. We'll just waste 50 hours of people's time. Yeah.
How much, human horsepower is being wasted.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that we have the same bottlenecks in our political systems. And, what is the Pareto's distribution, with the 80-20 rule? 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, the incentives, if the incentives are wrong, or no, it's not the incentives are wrong. Whatever incentives are built into your system is the output you will get. Like if the incentive, say for someone in government, is to be elected next year, at the next election, they're going to find every way they can to squeeze every minute out of their day into campaigning to make sure they get elected, if that's what keeps them getting paid and gives them their power. And that's the incentive system we have now. That's why you have term limits, because otherwise people would just stay there forever if they could.
Oh,
but
exactly.
It's got to be a way of just addressing incentives. If the incentive is that you decrease child mortality, and maybe that's something where you say, okay, guess what, government, if you're coming in, we'll elect you, but current child mortality as measured this way is 3%. If you want to get paid next year, it needs to be less than 3%. Okay, we're going to focus on getting that done. Otherwise, we don't get paid. Got the incentives right. If they can just say what they want, yes, we'll do that. Oh, we won't. There was a problem. We didn't get around to that. Then the incentive is, well, if we get elected again, we'll get more money and we can do that again. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and that was probably the other main driver for what I'm proposing, is to disconnect wealth and politics. And in this day and age where, I don't know, it seems like the corporate incentives are driving most of the decisions, well, particularly in the post-COVID era. How do we say it? Yeah, it's like, so there's a couple of elements to it. One is the effect of corporations through lobbying. And I mean, if you follow American politics, the heaviest contributors by way of lobbying, which is I suppose it's the same here effectively, the heaviest contributors to lobbying have been cyclical with whoever is the biggest companies. I'm struggling to think of the links here. But like say, while the auto industry was most powerful, up and coming in the US, like through the 50s, 60s, 70s, they were the heaviest lobbyists, heaviest contributors to US politics. I think through the 80s, it was the oil industry. Then you started to get the tech rising up, and at the same time, the pharmaceutical industry. And then, so obviously in the last few years, pharmaceutical industry, Pfizer has been the biggest contributor to US politics.
Yeah.
And look what it's...
And they'll be spending a lot of money on their lobbyists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look at the nest egg it provided for the shareholders.
Well,
who are very tightly linked into US politics.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a revolving door.
Yeah. But what I almost feel, and maybe this has been, people have thought more about this, maybe this has been happening for a while, but it almost feels like now we're at that Blade Runner concept of the inflection point where it's not the governments that have the power, it's the corporations. You know, like this Tyrell Corp,
Absolutely.
which is Tyrell Corp is effectively the government. What Tyrell Corp says and does is what goes. And it feels like that now. You're getting to that stage where Google, if Google just decided for whatever reason, we're just pulling the plug for a day, or in that country, they almost did it in Australia last year, or a year or two ago, when the Australian government said to Google, you guys, you just scrape all this news and we want to charge you for it. So Google said, we don't like that. We're just going to, or it might have been Facebook, it said, we're just going to stop showing that news. So this was things like Community Soccer Club. You know, they would post on Facebook that, this Saturday we're playing down here and come along. And so Facebook said, well, that news, that soccer game's happening for those under 8s, we'll just stop showing that. And the government was like, fuck. We're already they've got us over a barrel. We didn't even realise it. Like, we're so entrenched with these guys. That corporate power, it's strong.
Yeah. There's something I heard in a commentary today, which piqued my interest. Was it made me sort of come to a conclusion. And we can explore it a little bit. The difference between scandal and conspiracy is whether or not it's been proven true.
Right.
Do you get that?
It's a conspiracy until it's been proven true, then it becomes a scandal.
It becomes a scandal. You know? And so that, you know, the title of conspiracy theorist, obviously it's all over the show.
Yeah.
And, it sort of ties up. We watched doco last night. I think it was just called Crack, and following the crack epidemic in the 80s in the US, in the beginning of the prison state for the US. You know, where now you've got corporate prisons which make money for private corporations. So there's this ongoing incentive
off government funding to keep people in prison.
You know,
and
there's
incarcerate
also
more.
An interesting documentary which follows the jailing of 2 judges in the US, which they set up companies of their own, and they were in a supply chain to the jails. And so these guys were jailing all these kids like minors. This guy got himself put on a bench of a court that's jailing minors, and kids are saying swear words at school
and get in jail for it.
Get in jail.
Yeah.
And then that just starts them off into a life of imprisonment.
And this is that incentive thing.
Yeah.
The incentive is to put people in prison. Okay, let's do that. Let's put people in prison. We get paid for it.
Yeah, and of course, I don't know, that's probably a conspiracy until it got proven.
Yeah, exactly. Then it became a scandal.
Yeah, but, you know, and so the Iran Contra scandal, using the shipping of
Selling weapons,
crack cocaine through Nicaragua
Yeah.
back to the US, using the revenue from that to supply arms to the Contras, was a conspiracy theory. But once it got found out,
It was a scandal.
It became known as the Iran-Contra scandal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, there is a great quote about the incentives. I don't know who had said it, but it was like, you show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome.
It was Morga. What's the name? The partner in Warren Buffett's partner in.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's true. People, we're in a system. We're in a capitalist system, which is good.
Charlie Munger.
Was it? I'll have to look him up. Yeah, I don't know him. But that quote I've heard before. You make money. Making money is what puts food on the table and pays the mortgage. So you want to find ways to make money. So if there's an incentive to do something, you're going to go and do it. That's where, I like your consensus idea of this internet of voting. I just wonder how that can be set up to. My brain's struggling with this, but in the way that you solve a problem, what's the square root of 9? It's 3. That's the answer. That is the answer that you want. If you can get this to somehow, circle in on the answer, the solution to your problem, then that's your incentive. If you defined it right, that feels like a really powerful tool. If you can point that at a problem and say, we can now have the right people, which might be geographically the people who live in this local community dealing with this local community issue, or it might be nationally. We have people nationally who deal with this national issue. We can get them to not just be swayed by opinion or something they heard, but instead kind of track down a path where you solve the problem. So what comes out the other end of the process is that's the solution to your problem. Therefore, go and do that. That's what goes back up, as you said, up to the top. Where here's the guidelines of what you go and do, because that set the incentive to achieve that outcome. If people,
I think that's handled as a function of people's motivation to seek a quality outcome. Yeah. And so the incentive's always there. The way that it's achieved at the moment is a dead duck process. It's to me, as I explain on my website, we're in a dead vote time. You go along to a voting booth every so many years and you cast a vote. That vote is live until it gets to the fellow who counts it, and then it might as well go up in smoke. There's no one looking back. There's no one looking for the preferences that were, you didn't put any preferences into that vote. No. All you did was put a tick on a piece of paper. So there's no connection to you, the voter, at all. No one's looking back to even consider, he was in that area. He might have voted for me because of this issue. Yeah. Obviously we're in this post common sense world where Trump lifted the lid on any sort of connection to the voter and just showed that there is no connection to the voter. So it's exposed for what it is. But yeah, the other part of it is, or something I thought about of what you were saying there, is a lot of what has motivated me is the underlying honesty of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, there's do you follow Bitcoin much? Do you know much about it?
I just know that what I bought 18 months ago is fucking 1/5 of what I paid. Oh
no. Oh, hello.
Let me go and sort that out. What's going on there?
Here we go. Is it just warming up?
No, that switch is just failing. That's all. I don't know why.
Or you got the magic touch.
No. Come on.
You can't do this to us halfway through.
There we go. Or not. We'll pretend it's candlelight. There we go.
Yeah.
It's just like, it might sort itself out in a second. If it doesn't, it's not, is it? Let's do this. Let's stop and come back for part 2 in just a moment.
All right.
What's going on there? It did a little bit before. Oh, now it seems to